There we are. Fantastic. Okay, so welcome everyone. Today we will do a session in which a webinar in which we will be be joined by David Shilling, who's a well-known artist and designer, hatman, who does incredible designs, as you can see in the picture, and who plans to go to the International Space Station. And we'll basically begin talking about that journey, and hopefully we'll have other sessions also as he makes progress towards that trip, and hopefully also when he goes there. I thought that maybe I could start with an introduction and basically give you an overview of what's going on in space, and how this is actually a sign of something much bigger that is taking place, that really will allow us, anyone, to join the space revolution and go to space. Usually we tend to think of astronauts as incredibly well-trained people, and sort of only less than 600 people have gone to space up until now. So that's a pretty accurate picture of what's going on until today. However, what's going on is actually something's changing. So we begin to see people like David, who's a designer, as I was telling you, thinking about going to space. And well, David has a background in designing hats like this one that is at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, or this one. And as I was saying, he's planning to go to the space station with a company called Action that is organizing those trips. What's changing and what's making this possible is new technologies, new rockets like the Falcon 9, for example, that are allowing astronauts to go to space on a more frequent basis. This is not anymore just the realm of large rockets that are owned by government sponsored space agencies. And these companies are beginning to see a market and an opportunity to make frequent launches to the space station and to other destinations. So we have, for example, a mission, a commercial civilian mission to space planned by SpaceX. Actually, if you saw, there was an ad in the Super Bowl earlier this year inviting people to apply for this mission. So this is really becoming something that is available for other people, and this is going to become even more. It's going to become easier as Starship becomes available, and we begin to see frequent launches with high payload capacity going to space, not only to low Earth orbit, but also there is a mission plan for 2023 for the moon, in which we have a rich businessman from Japan who will select a number of crew members who will go with him to the moon, to orbit the moon in 2023. So we begin to see these kinds of things. This is what they will do. It's called, the mission is called Dear Moon. And after that mission, or on top of that, we also see companies like Blue Origin that will take Jeff Bezos, his brother, and another person who paid $28 million last week to do a very short trip into space. But this is something that is going to become commercial, and it's going to become more and more accessible. Prices are going to come down, and eventually, over time, we're going to see more and more people accessing space, and the price is coming down. Same thing with Virgin Galactic, that is already preparing its flights into space also. And Axiom, this company that David is working with, or looking to hire his services, their services, is also planning even a space station, a commercial space station that will begin with modules attached to the International Space Station that eventually will become a self-standing space station. So very exciting times, and we have a very interesting person with us. I just wanted to give a brief overview of what's going on before asking or giving an asking actually, sorry, Sophia Levin to welcome David Shilling, and also I want to welcome David to this session. The idea is to have a very open and fluent conversation, relaxed, and to explore his motivations and his views about space, and if you like, also about design. But Sophia will be our host, will be asking the questions. Sophia, welcome, and please just take it forward from this point.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Hi, David. It's a pleasure to have you. I will start asking you one question, and then we can open it for everyone to ask what they are curious about or what they want to know. Well, this first question is, what inspired you to do this trip, and what's your experience with this? What are you trying to achieve? Basically, that.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me. Hi, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, we can see you.
You're good. Okay, great. Yeah, I think Ignacio started us off on the right track in that, and I suppose a good place to start is the beginning. So I think today when we're talking, we'll just sort of stick really to the beginning and how this all started. And I know in the chat you can sort of post little things if any of you out there want to, because I don't want this to seem like it's Sunday. It's not. You're not at school, guys, and uni, whatever. It's not work. So I just wonder how many of you. I think many of you are sort of early 20s, teenagers, whatever, and I want to put this into perspective that when I was very young, even younger than you, I was once, and basically in 1961, the first man went into space, and that was Yuri Gagarin. I'm sure a lot of you know this stuff and a lot of you don't. The reason I'm telling you this is because what has happened is, or what hasn't happened is really a tragedy, but you guys, anyone a little younger than me, and most of you, like everybody's younger than me. So basically, you'll all be able to go into space if you want to, and you'll also be able to get jobs in the space industry because it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and offer amazing opportunities to all of you at every stage, whether you're very young and still at school, or you're at university, or even if you've already got a job. That job will link into the space industry in a very, very short time. And I just want everybody to be aware of this enormous explosion that's happened very recently, and put it into context with my passion for going to space. So Sophia, if this is all right, and with you guys, I'll just carry on a little bit chatting. And any questions you want to ask, just chuck them in the chat box. I'll try and see them. Sophia will look at them. We'll get through it, and then we'll only take about 15 minutes of your time, and then we'll meet again, hopefully, if you want to. So basically, as I said, in 1961, the first, and I was very young, the first guy went into space, Yuri Gagarin, the Russian. At the end of the 60s, in 1969, Neil Armstrong famously became the first astronaut to step on the moon. And at the time, there was a lot of controversy, and people were saying it was faked and all this sort of thing. And even now, you've got people who think the Earth is flat and man never went on the moon. Can't be helped. We've got to work around that. But I warn you guys, because I guess everybody today with me on this chat is fairly convinced about space. Is that true? Raise hands, or if you want to, whatever. Good, cool, thank you. So basically, my generation was robbed, because what happened in the late 60s was there were enormous riots and stuff like that against money being spent by government on space travel. And I would recommend you watch a few films on space travel, one of them being First Man. And although it's a bit slushy and sentimental in parts, it's a brilliant acting. And it puts my period into perspective. By the way, I happened to briefly meet Buzz Aldrin, who was the second man on the moon in the same expedition, voyage, whatever. But Neil Armstrong I've never met, and unfortunately he died not very long afterwards, in a test crash. So the facts of all my space stuff is really more over to you. And in fact, I can see one of my friends from London. I'm actually in Monaco. I'm in the Principality of Monaco. That's where I've been based for 20 years. One of my dear friends, his mother and young chap called Danny, knows more detail about space trips than any other guy I know. And I know astronauts, right? Lots of them. But anyway, in very brief detail, we were robbed because since that first stepping on the moon, really almost nothing's happened until the last few years. And the big change has really been, first of all, that it's not anymore only government money that is backing these projects, it's private money as well, and that's opened up an enormous field. But on top of that, the exciting thing is, I'm a bit of a fan of Elon. People fans of Elon Musk? I guess. I haven't got a car, but yeah, good. And so basically, Elon had this genius idea. It's one of those things that you sort of wake up in the morning and think, why didn't I think of that? It's so easy. And do you know what that is? Do any of you know what that idea was? Basically, it was that, is that Danny? I told you he knows everything, right? Basically, I'll tell you because it'll save sort of time on this particular one. But basically, you couldn't run an airline if you had to leave the aircraft every time it landed and start building a new aircraft. And basically, you had to have launchers that returned back to Earth to be able to be reusable. And I think that is possibly, and I may be wrong, but I hope I'm not. You can put it in the chat if you want to. I think that's one of the big groundbreaking things of the last few years. I'll now go into the beginning, if you'd let me, of moving on from the very fast, because we haven't got much time and you're busy. So we'll move on from the 1970s through, straight to 2.5 years ago, end of 2018. And when Monaco does an event in Monaco, I don't know, have any of you been to Monaco? Anyone been to Monaco? No? Okay. That's a long way from you. So I think there's some friends here from Argentina. Yeah. Yes. And some from Mexico. Yeah. And other maybe even Peru, Ignacio, you were saying. And we'll get more friends coming in. Because before I go much further, if you've got sort of pencils, papers, and things like that together, we're going to keep you informed on my Twitter account, which we've just set up specially, called davidshilling.space. And I also have a website, davidshilling.space. So maybe we could put that in the chat or something as a Sophia or Ignacio, if you can help everyone. So you've got davidshilling.space as a Twitter account. If you want to start a little forum going and little chats and things before we meet again, I think that'd be great. I'll try and respond, or you guys respond with each other. I think that'd be great. And the website's not great, but it can be better and maybe it'll help. So basically, when Monaco does something, they do it really well. and they did an amazing space event at the end of 2018. And that event was mind-blowing, because they not only had the premiere of a NASA film celebrating 50 years of NASA, but I mean, all of you understand what I'm saying with NASA, aren't you? Yeah, I don't think I'd have to explain that. But there was then an interval with a little cocktail and all the government, the prince himself, and so on in the audience, and Buzz Aldrin in the audience. And then after that, we had a little cocktail. We went back and we had an hour-long conference with 7 astronauts. It may not sound many, but in all those 50 years I'm talking about, there have been very few astronauts, and these are career astronauts. To become a career astronaut up to now has meant years and years of training, an incredible selection process. The European Space Agency at the moment is recruiting career astronauts. I think they've had 1,000 serious applications they are looking at, to whittle it down to like 100, and then in the end it's only going to be 3 people who might be chosen as career astronauts. It's still incredible. But I don't want to put you off. I'm going to repeat myself a little from the beginning and say that to be involved in space, your generation and people younger than me, you don't have to become an astronaut, a career astronaut. You can be a private, you can be a tourist, you can go up there for a few days in maybe in a decade, it'll be affordable. It's moving that fast. And basically, that's really the exciting message. Anyway, so we had this conference, 7 astronauts. I mean, that is, nobody can get 7 astronauts together on a panel talking about space. Even Ignacio, I don't think he got me, and I haven't even been there yet. So basically, at the end of that, I met 1 or 2 of them and got on incredibly well with Michael Lopez Alegria. Michael, at that time, 2.5 years ago, was involved with the setup of this company called Axiom. And Axiom are intending to replace the aging, at the moment, ISS, International Space Station. They're intending to replace that. Daniel, tell me what I should have said. And basically, I'm in trouble. Basically, they'll stick that on the aging ISS. And they are also offering people like me who've dreamed all their life to go to space, the opportunity to spend about a week on the International Space Station. But we're saying I'm going, and the plan is I'd go in fall of next year, so about a year's time. There are enormous, enormous challenges before I go, which one of them is 15 weeks, 15 weeks of training before I'm allowed to go. And obviously, as it's obvious, I'm not a young man, so there's physical, medical tests, and then there's also the psychological tests. And I think the psychological tests shouldn't be underestimated. But maybe, I mean, we've all had different our countries have reacted differently to COVID and the pandemic. But I'll tell you, isolation for the pandemic has helped me get into the mood of being isolated on ISS, because I won't be able to open a door and walk in the garden and, you know, all that sort of thing. So psychologically, think about that. There's also going to be a lot of things your head is going to have to get to terms with before you can go into space. But the challenge is worth it. A lot of people ask me if I'm afraid, and I say to them, no, I'm not afraid of going, trust me. They need to keep me alive and well and get back to Earth just as much as I need to, because it would be a terrible blow for the space industry if anything happens to me. But I must say, it does seem that I'll be the first real tourist, because even the people who've paid to go to into space so far, most of them have had some sort of test training. They've had some sort of link with space, and I'm not. I mean, I'm really the most ordinary kind of guy. But what's my passion? We're going back to your question and at last answering it. My passion is, first of all, to be able to do what I wanted to do all those years ago when I was a teenager and go into space. And the second thing is to design and make art in space and in zero gravity. Over to you guys. Hit me with some questions.
That's amazing. I mean, having the possibility to create art from there, I think the inspiration is totally different than from here. But I think there's some questions from Gala, if you want to say it out loud.
Hi, David.
Hi, Bella.
I'm a designer too, and my question is, well, I hate uniforms. I always try to customize it. My question is, what do you think about the spacesuit? Are you trying to do something special for it?
Good one. I like it.
The space company doesn't allow you to do anything?
I've got to say, I mean, I hope another session, if you'll come and join us for another session, we'll talk in more detail about the extraordinary things that have happened over the last couple of years since that meeting in 2018 that started me on my journey. In those days, I mean, the article Ignacio showed you from the Daily Mail, the whole page, also in the Sunday Times, double page spread, the whole thing. But people didn't really take it seriously that it was going to be possible for a man of my age to go to International Space Station. Even in the last year, so much progress has been made, and we never saw a test of SpaceX successfully till very, very recently. I mean, the first two-man space test was just less than a year ago. I've got to say, I think the SpaceX capsule for the launcher is just fabulous. I mean, it's amazing. It's everything it ought to be. It looks, I haven't been in it, and I'm dying to try it out and have my seat made to suit me, but it's fabulous. The actual spacesuit, I think, could do with a bit of improvement. That's all I'm saying.
Thanks.
Perfect. Jose also has a question.
Yeah. Well, thank you, David, on the first place for being here. I'd like to know. I think all of us here share our excitement about private people. Let's call them, to being able to go into space. But I'd really like to know, what do you think can contribute as an artist in space? I mean, what's your insight? What do you think that you can contribute to how the rest of us understand space?
Okay, that's a great question, because basically it's fundamental, and perhaps something I hope some of you I'll be telling you for the first time, but some of you may know. The one thing I've found with every astronaut every astronaut I've met, and we've chatted and so on, and they all say the most amazing thing is when the capsule's leaving Earth and you see the Earth getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and as part of the universe. So I think universally, for making a bit of a pun, I think the most exciting thing for everybody on Earth, whether you're an artist or a designer or not, is going to be this complete rethink about your planet. We're not the only planet in the universe. And up to now, we've become much too much, my country or your country or whatever. And suddenly, hopefully, there's going to be a very big change in the way people who live on Earth are going to think about themselves and their situation in the universe. And hopefully it might bring us a bit more together. The internet obviously does. Here I am, miles away in a slightly different time zone even, and talking to you like this. So we're getting closer to this, but I hope that's the biggest thing. And that's not going to be down to me only. But I think because I'm, as I said, just a tourist, I have no engineering experience or science experience or anything. I think that will help. The second part of the answer to your question is that obviously once you get into space, making art, we don't know really. I mean, there has been art made in space, but a career artist like I am, since I left school at 16, I went to one of the most academic schools in England called St. Paul's, which one or two of you may know if you know a lot of English people. It was, I hated every minute, but I learned amazing discipline there. And I had the opportunity of if I'd wanted to be taught by some amazing teachers. But I did leave at 16 and I made a career in art in general, in design and art. And very happy to talk more about that another time if you guys want me to. But yeah, I mean, no career artist has worked as far as I can see in space, because I've told you, if you're an astronaut, you have to, it's a career in itself, obviously. One of the exciting things that I'm dying to do is make art and draw or paint or whatever is possible in zero gravity. That's just going to be amazing. And hopefully I'll get that opportunity. And there is no way that I can replicate creating work in zero G on Earth at the moment. It just, I mean, I'm very, very grateful in a way to Jeff Bezos for making the trip available on his Blue Origin, which will go in on July the 20th. It's planned to go up on, so only a month away, exactly a month away actually. So Jeff Bezos, his brother, and this guy who's paid 28 million reputedly for the ticket. He's paid that for 10 minutes in zero gravity. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous. And I hope also it doesn't put off girls and guys and, young people like you and other people to think, oh, this is just a playground for rich people. It's not for us. It's for you. That's a one-off. It's, not everyone's going to have a Beeple NFT at 69 million, but it doesn't mean the internet isn't for everybody. Does that, I hope that answers a little bit your question.
Yeah, sure it does. And thank you for your answer, David.
Thank you.
Ignacio, do you want to ask something?
Yes.
I have a question too after that.
Okay, fantastic. So, David, I wanted to ask you, I mean, we basically saw that you're going to space. I mean, I think that it will be, as you said, a first, in the sense that we'll have a designer and an artist in space, in this International Space Station, doing art. That will be historic in many ways. We also see that after that, I mean, you'll be a pioneer in this sort of in this new adventure that humanity is embarking on. But we also see that after that, there will be an explosion, and as you said, this is likely to become less the playground of people who can pay the high tickets that are expensive tickets that are available today, and more of a democratic, democratic movement. So more people will be able to join space. More designers specifically will be able to be in space. What kind of impacts do you think that we will begin to see once designers, people like you, begin going to space? How will that change space? What kind of exciting things do you think that could happen? And also, if you could start the answer to that, telling us a little bit more about yourself as a designer. So a little bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, I think really we want to, because we haven't got so much time. I think we've got to be a bit careful about talking so much about me today, because quite frankly, I mean, I although I've never been to university or art school or anything myself, and I left school at 16, I do talk about, you know, I'm a visiting lecturer at Royal College of Art in London, and you know, I can talk about design and art. I'm happy, but I think it's more important to get over the fact that I don't see designers going into space as anything very special. I think it's everybody going in space, and I think at a time when young people, particularly, seem to be nervous about getting jobs and about employment in the future, I think whatever job and whatever you're doing is relevant to the space industry. So can I sort of make that as part of my answer?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think really that's what, if you tell your friends who perhaps are cynical about space to join us another time, and I'll explain. I mean, a little thing that occurs to me, I live in Monaco. I don't know if all of you or some of you have heard of EasyJet, the airline. Have you heard of EasyJet, which is really the brain child of Stelios, who invented EasyJet, who happens to be a neighbor. I mean, he lives 5 minutes down the road, and I actually saw him walking the dog yesterday. And Sir Stelios, that is, walking a very small dog, and basically a lovely guy. To put into context my age and your age, 25 years ago when he started EasyJet, and it's only about 25 years ago, and I mean, around the world, EasyJet budget airline industry, it was unheard of for people from London to go for the weekend to New York, or I guess from Buenos Aires to go to London or to Paris for a weekend. And now that's become not commonplace, but it's pretty usual, and it's not so expensive. Things move fast in the age that of internet and so on we're living in. And don't forget, we didn't even really have internet moving till the last sort of 10 years or so. So whereas it's bad enough with technology being my age, I'm more sorry for people of like 35 and 40, because you digital natives know it all. I mean, you just look at a telephone and your life opens up. But everybody else, it's not usual to us. And the same way with space travel, I think people are still not realizing how fast this is going to move, especially with Elon Musk. Elon Musk isn't building Starship. I don't know if you can sort of hands up to me maybe, but I mean, Starship, you may have heard of. He had 2 failed tests of it, and then a couple of weeks ago, it worked, and they did a test. Starship is the real game changer, because it's planned to hold 100 seats and take 100 people into space. He's not planning that for billionaires. It wouldn't work. He is building, and there's several prototypes. Danny tells me, because Danny is my sort of eyes and ears of the space industry in London and on Earth at the moment. And there are several prototypes of Starship, and he is planning to get 100 passengers up into space at a time and that's not going to work if they do that on a regular basis with just billionaires. Do you want me to answer more of your question, Ignacio, or do we leave it to Sophia? Said she's got a question.
Sophia, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question. Do you know what can you take to space, or what would you like to take to make art there? Are you able to take what you want, or do you have any requirement?
One of the problems with space travel at the moment is that it is so difficult. I mean, you have a very small luggage. Even at the price of tickets now, you can't take very much luggage with you. So imagine your sort of worst nightmare of cabin luggage, even less than that sort of thing. So I mean, I'm a designer, and I don't know if some of you are designers and some of you are artists. Tell me. But basically, I know how to pack, so I'm going to be very, very careful about what I take up with me, and I will have to discuss what is possible and what's likely to be able to be used on space. I think one of the first things that occurred to me, if you're not being totally professional and thinking about your work, what do you do about meals? Because everything flies around in zero gravity, for instance, you can't have pepper and salt in the normal way, because if you started sprinkling pepper or salt on your food, it would go all over the place. So the same way with the paints I used or whatever, I mean, that's another discussion, but I am allowed luggage, yes, and I will have also hopefully internet access every day, so I can talk to you guys from space, because I have ideas of, you know, I mean, I was asked about designing the spacesuit. When I do go, because it's an incredibly costly trip, I want it to be useful, and I also want to make partnerships with companies who want me to help them with design projects, because obviously I will be one of the first people to know what luggage works best when space tourists are going into space. I will also know what's really comfortable to wear and what you want to wear when you're on a space trip, and nobody else will. However good a designer you are, if you haven't been there, you won't know. It's like whether you're going to Ibiza or whether you're going to Alaska. It's good to experience the event to know.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that, but the experience would be very valuable for all of the people that don't know what to take to space, or well, most of us.
But also,
know,
I think one of the greatest things when you design is to have a passion.
Yeah.
When you have a passion, it's really great, because then you research all the details you need to know, and I'm pretty passionate about space.
The perfect combination. And I think Julio has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Sophia, and thank you, David, for being here. I have a question about do you have any personal item that you will love to take to space with you? Anything from your life that you will love to take to space and get back here?
Well, actually, nobody's asked me that before, so that's really, really good one. I mean, not at the moment, not particularly. I have talked with Danny, and we're thinking of what little sort of memento we might take up, tests and so on of SpaceX and that. Try not to, because once you watch them, you get really hooked on it. It's so exciting when you watch these tests live. Believe me, NASA does amazing live test broadcasts, and it's very exciting to see the landing on, as the launcher meets ISS and hooks on, and in real time, it's very, very entertaining and very exciting. There's this little sort of doll that you have, and that's always changed for each flight, I think. And basically, you need this little funny doll because then you'll find out when you're in zero gravity. Because when you're not in zero gravity, it sits there. And then when you're in zero gravity, of course, it doesn't sit there any longer. It starts floating around. So that'll be interesting.
Thank you, David.
Juan Ignacio also has a question.
Yes, it's a similar question, but if you could choose a crewmate to go with, who would it be?
Yeah, oh, actually, I was asked about this one, and I joke that I think the most fun person to go with would be Elon Musk, because, oh my God, I mean, it would be so extraordinary to have him talk me through. I've never met him, and I mean, I can't say he's absolutely the #1 person I'd want to have dinner with on Earth, but I think to have that sort of expert talk you through would be absolutely amazing. On a more sort of crazy note, I don't know. I was very lucky with my first collection of hats, because was bought by a very famous department store, which was like the coolest departments. Got me over to New York in the late 70s. I went to Studio 54. I'd already met Andy Warhol and everything. I think Andy would be pretty interesting to sit with for this flight. Quite funny. And then, wow, if we could bring Neil Armstrong back. I don't know. I think also one thing I'd love to share with you that is one of the biggest differences between the time we were talking about, or I was talking about the 1960s, when you had Yuri Gagarin, the Russian, in space, and then at the end of the 60s, you had the first man on the moon with the Americans. In those days, everyone was talking about conquering space. I think it also goes back a bit to the question about what would I take with me. I don't think really we're conquering space anymore. I've not heard that expression in a very long time. And what we're doing is really, and I think it's most important for everyone, who's learning and still at uni and so on, to get into your minds that we're really reaching out to space. That's all. It seems almost impossible that there aren't life forces outside of our own planet. It's arrogant to suppose that there couldn't be, because honestly, if you don't believe me, just go out one night this week and look up in the sky, and we know nothing. We look at the sea and we can't see anything, but we know how many fishes. You go swimming, you see all those fishes around and everything. We look up in the sky, and because we can't see it with our eyes, without help or telescope or satellite, we don't connect with other planets, other life forces. But I'm sure they're out there, and so we've got to share. We've got to not think of conquering planets, but we've got to share. And I suppose the other thing that slightly, I mean, I need to share with you quickly, I think, is that when people start talking about the moon, and then they start talking about Mars, it's a very, very different thing. The trip to the moon is space station is really close, but the trip to the moon is, I think, very soon achievable. I think we'll see both men and women on the moon in a very, very short time, probably I'm not a betting man, but I'd have been very disappointed if it wasn't before 2026, i.e. 5 years. I'd hope it's before that. Actually, another point is that NASA are now training 50-50 ladies and men to go. So that's a step forward as well. I think Ignacio, you wanted to
Yeah, no, fantastic. I think that this provides a very good intro to the journey that you'll be doing, David. I don't know, Sophia, if you have other questions or.
No, I just got one question from before, that if you know what the training consists of before going to space.
As an introduction, it's really, excuse me, it's really, again, I think what this whole idea of this meeting was really to have an introduction, see how it works, and maybe if you guys can talk to your friends and have a few questions from people who are a bit more cynical and so far less attached to the idea of traveling in space in the future. Yeah, the training is really, I mean, it's 15 weeks of it. Even I don't know all the details, but a conference on a Zoom called Conference, and a lady who was ex-NASA was talking about so many advances in space. I mean, for those cynical people, think tests are being done in space, which are advancing life on Earth in a huge way. So, you know, this idea that, oh, we shouldn't be spending money on space, we should be spending money on hospitals and schools and everything. Work that can be done in zero gravity with space travel and everything is all helping to enhance life on Earth. It's really important. The training program itself is absolutely crazy and extensive, but it won't be necessary for you guys in a few years' time to do that sort of depth of training. It's just because NASA still is in control. It is a government project, and they aren't used to having people who are just space travelers. And so this lady on the space conference was rather more dismissive than me about the opportunities for you all to go into space. And yeah, I think the biggest thing was she was getting confused with, at the moment, if an astronaut goes up for 6 months or a year, which is much more normal, like that, every month you lose 1 to 2% of muscle mass when you're in zero gravity, for instance. So that's why a lot of images you'll see from space is guys doing exercise. I mean, girls and guys, right? In space. That's because you're prone to lose a lot of body mass. Now, if you're going up for 6 months, 1 to 2% a month is pretty substantial stuff. But if you're only going up for a week, or you're going to, like Ignacio mentioned, the trip of the Japanese guy who's going to take people around the moon, well, I mean, it's a completely different ballgame. You don't need to do, you know, all that exercise if you're just there for a day or two, do you? You don't need it. So basically, another time, if you want to, I'll go through more details of the training program. For instance, one of the exciting things, I mean, I've already mentioned the that space is universal. So basically, one of the exciting things on space is you've got on the ISS, you've got different sections for different, like the Russian section and the American section. So part of the training I do know entails learning a bit more Russian than I know at the moment, so that I can be invited to join the Russian section for a little chat or two, maybe a lunch or a dinner.
Fantastic, David. I think that you gave us a very good intro to your journey to space, and I think it's an opportunity for all of us to have access to something that is still very far away from all of us. So we still see. I mean, even though we begin to learn that this is happening, the fact that we are able to talk with you sort of brings it closer and makes it more real. And we will definitely look forward to another session, which I mean, just so that everybody knows, the idea is to do a second session on August the 8th. And then we'll be focusing more on design and the connection to space, but also to learn any updates that David has on his journey to space, which I think will be the closest way to or the best way to begin to get closer to space, begin to realize that this is something that is going to come closer to our lives, that all of you, the younger generation, are going to have a chance to be a part of that, and probably many chances in many different formats. And this is a way to be introduced to that possibility and begin to see that this is real, that this is something that you don't need to be a fully dedicated astronaut to be able to aspire to. So thank you, David. I think that unless if you want to say anything.
Thank you very much. As I said, anybody who wants to, I mean, before the next session, which you've got, I know you've got a lot of things, exams and stuff like that in the middle, but if you've got time to go in and put up something on the Twitter that a question that you'd like me to think about, or if you want to go to my David, DavidShilling.space, that's the website. And if you put some interesting comments in there, and maybe one or two of you can comment, and it'll make more useful our next meet.
Fantastic. And also the idea is to at some point have a conversation with the angle of Axiom and trying to learn more about what they're doing because I think it would be a great window to explore the future of space, particularly human flights. I mean, into space and space stations, space habitats. So,
but what we said, you know, what was so extraordinary that I started this journey in earnest at the end of 2018, and at that time, my only chance at my age to get to, I couldn't wait to go to the moon because I'm too old to wait around. I have to go as soon as possible. And there've been delays. We were hoping I'd already have been up there and come back, but the test didn't go as quickly as possible we thought. But actually, one of the biggest changes, so much has happened in the last year or so that now there are many options already for people going into space. Many options. Axiom is not now the only one. They are a leader.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's happening, guys. Get on the ship with me.
Fantastic.
You're joining me on my journey.
Fantastic.
Thank you all very much.
I've enjoyed
it.
Thank you very much,
Thank
David.
you for
It was
being
wonderful
here.
to have you. Thank you, Sophia, for co-hosting this session, and
Thank you,
thank you
Sophia.
everyone
Thank you, Julio,
for joining us.
And thank you for joining, because without you, the journey is not so worthwhile.
Thank you.